Robin, tell us about Nelson Stevens.
This is probably my most worthwhile, as a historian, stone. Simply because my research and my knowledge got this stone here. This was an unmarked grave, and I was doing research for my Civil War tour, and I had a list of potential veterans of the Civil War, and this man's name was on it. And I was reading a newspaper in 1891, and in it, it said that the veterans of the GAR, the Grand Army of the Republic post here in Hamilton, visited the site of Nelson Stevens' grave, who died in 1890, and they listed his unit, and it was the 25th USCT, and it's down there on the stone, 25 USCT. As a historian of the Civil War, I would know what that USCT is. Not too many people would. It is the United States Colored Troops. So when I found that in the paper, I knew Hamilton had a black Civil War veteran. That's why this makes this so rewarding.
Which was unusual. Obviously.
Very unusual. Never expected it. When I was doing the research, this was an unmarked grave. So what happened was that I had to triangulate it with the documents that they had at the cemetery office and walk it out. And this is the proximate area of his unmarked grave. And they assure that it is.
And so basically this is a four-part story.
Basically, yeah. So we got an unmarked grave, we got a veteran from the Civil War, we got a stone on the gravesite now, and we've got a garden around it. And those are kind of you got the story of the Civil War and who Nelson Stevens as a man did during that. And the Civil War was 1861 to 1865. Nelson signed up in 1865 in Buffalo, New York. He had already been in Hamilton before that, so he had to cross the border to sign up, which means he had to cross the border to escape slavery during the war to get into Canada. So he must have come to Canada on the Underground Railway, which made that an incredible journey. Now, he put his life in his hands to cross the border again and sign up to fight for the North, which was Lincoln and the North and the Blue, and to fight the slave owners of the South. And he was born as a slave in Lynchburg, Virginia, on a tobacco farm. So how did he get from that tobacco farm to Hamilton to cross the border to get to enlist? That is an incredible story, which we'll never probably know because there was never any documentation on the Underground.
And so tell us what you had to go through to get this stone here.
Oh, that's a good one too. I went to Washington, D.C. I had to prove that this was the black man that we have buried here. It was Nelson Stevens that fought in the Civil War and was signed up on the 25th of USCT. I went to Washington, D.C. myself, and I went to the archives, and they gave me his enlistment papers in my hand. He signed it with an X. He was illiterate ex-slave. Right? So with that documentation, I brought it back to Hamilton, wrote the story, and launched my Civil War tour in 2007. At that point on the tour was the American commander of the U.S. veterans in Canada on the tour. He handed me his card and said, "We need to talk." He goes, "What do you got on this guy?" Because at that point it was an unmarked grave. And I showed him all the documents that I got from Washington, D.C. He said, "This is a no-brainer. Here's an application for a veteran stone." I sent it down to Washington, D.C. and heard nothing. Nothing at all. No, thank you, we're looking into it, nothing. I get a phone call from the cemetery office and they say, "Robin, your stone's arrived." I went, whoa, what stone, right? I had forgotten all about it. I show up and this is the stone that the Washington Veterans Department sent us, Canada, for a black Civil War veteran. And the order to send it to us was signed by President George Bush.
Amazing story.
We got a stone.
And so I noticed that a garden has sprung up naturally around that.
Another
that
story.
wasn't placed there originally.
No, it was just grass, and the stone was there by itself. When we unveiled it, we put a blanket on it that he would have used during the Civil War. It was like an old blanket. Pulled it off and revealed it. And bit by bit by bit, over the last couple years, a garden has shown up here. There's now stones to retaining walls, there's dirt, there's flowers. They first started with a potted mum, and from that potted mum we now have a garden actually going 360 all the way to the back too. And you notice that there is an American flag on it.
Well, last time I was here, there was a little metal butterfly.
Yeah,
and this wasn't here, so tell us about this.
He fell down here. There's a little guy there. Yeah. And these are things, mementos that are people putting here, and they hear the story and they just bring it. Isn't that cool? I like that.
So how did the flag end up here, do you know?
Okay, the guy that gave me the application, the commander of the vets in Canada, now they wanted all my information of the veterans that I was researching that were Hamilton vets, because they consider them American vets in Canada. So now, in 1930, the last Civil War veteran in Canada died in Hamilton. And so every year, how I found Nelson Stevens is that those veterans would come to their comrades and put American flags on their graves. By 1930, they were very old men, and there were only a couple left. In 1930, the memory of where the graves were disappeared. So nobody did the grave visit anymore and put the American flag on Memorial Day, which they called Flag Day. So now they have a ceremony where they actually honor their vets by putting the flag on. And it's not just a American flag. I have found 18 Civil War veterans in Hamilton in this cemetery, and they put a flag on every one.
So that's a fascinating life story.
Yep. And probably one of my to accumulate that whole story as a historian, this is probably the epiphany of my research. I don't think I can, this is a eureka moment for a historian, right? You cannot get any higher than finding an unmarked grave with a black Civil War veteran and getting a stone from George Bush.
Yeah.
You know, I can't top that.
Good work, Rob.